Hey everybody, welcome to the Friday night live stream for studentloanjustice.org. My name is Alan Collins. We are Student Loan Justice. We are the oldest, largest, and in many ways, many important ways, we are really the only true grassroots citizens group fighting only and absolutely for student loan justice. So we've been around since 2006. We've been featured on 60 Minutes and ABC and NBC and CBS and Fox News and MSNBC and CNBC and all those other places. We have been and are the inspiration between many pieces of legislation. We're glad that you found us. What took you so long? Where we're at right now, folks, is we've got a petition with over 1 million signatures on it. This petition essentially ignited the conversation about canceling student loans by executive order. Let me back up for a minute. If you're new to this group, you should know a few things. This lending system is failed. I don't know how long it was when you got your student loans or how old you are or whatever, but even before this pandemic, so this time last year, let's say 16 or so months ago, 80% of all borrowers were never going to be able to repay their loans. Well over half were unable to make payments at all, and then another 25% or so were making payments, but their balance was going up. So 4 out of 5 of all federal student loan borrowers were never going to be able to repay their loans, and this is before the pandemic. Another key point you need to know, the class of 2004, so people who graduated, 17 years ago, their default rate is 40%. So the subprime home mortgage default rate by Kitty, look at the kitty, getting some production value here in tonight's live stream. So the 2004 default rate is 40%. Those people were only borrowing about All right, I'm going to try this. The class of 2004 was only borrowing about a third of what's being borrowed today. So 40% default rate for class of 2004. What do you think the default rate is for more recent borrowers? It's going to be like 65, 70, 75, 80% or so. So let's compare that with, for example, the subprime home mortgage crisis. The default rate for subprime home mortgages was about 1 in 5, 20%. We now know that the class of 2004, who graduated into, quite frankly, a great economy, their default rate, true lifetime default rate, 40%. So even the class of 2004, who was borrowing less than a third of what people are borrowing today, were defaulting 2 out of 5 times. That's double the default rate of subprime home mortgages. So folks, I'm telling you, this is a failed, and I mean catastrophically failed, lending system. So, for the first 16 years of our existence, we fought very moderately for the return of bankruptcy protections to student loans. Nobody wants to file for bankruptcy. It's a terrible thing to have to do. But the Founding Fathers called for uniform bankruptcy laws in the Constitution, ahead of the power to declare war, ahead of the power to raise a freaking army. That's how important the founders felt that bankruptcy was for all the citizens, in order to have a free republic. So today, student loans, they're the only type of loan in this country to be uniquely stripped of bankruptcy protections. But it gets worse, guys. Student loans also, unlike every other loan in this country, student loans have also been stripped of statutes of limitations. So this is a 1-2 punch. And there are other consumer protections that have been taken away uniquely from student loans as well. But those are the two big ones. And this has set up a predatory, hyperinflationary lending scam that, unfortunately for us, the federal government stands at the very top of this predatory hornet's nest. So, the good news, and I'm glad that you found us, we don't have to put up with this, people. We don't have to take this. The Constitution is on our side. The Founding Fathers are on our side. And the data at this point is just overwhelming. Over a third of U.S. states, like 18, 19 if you include Washington, D.C. 18 states owe more in student loan debt than their entire state budgets. You know, I was writing some numbers the other day. The state of New York, for example, they owe $112 billion in student loan debt. Now, they owe a little bit less than the annual state budget, but with $112 billion, you could build the World Trade Center. And I don't mean just the one tower, but like that whole freaking complex 28 times. But there's other examples I could throw out. In Georgia, for example, there's enough student loan debt in Georgia to buy every farm in Georgia twice, not one time, two times, and still have like, I think, $15 billion left over. So we're starting to see these just insane and crazy statistics like what I just mentioned. These are student loans we're talking about, guys. You know, when President LBJ rolled out the lending program back in 1965, before most of us were born, he declared that the loans would be free of interest. Well, today, over $100 billion a year clicks off on the nation's student loan debt tab in interest alone. So, guys, this lending system is done. It's toast. It's finished. It's a dead man walking. There is no saving it, and there should be no saving it. So we fought very hard for the return of bankruptcy protections, as I said, for 16 years. But at this late date in the death spiral of this lending system, I think only returning bankruptcy protections is not nearly enough. I think that will probably compel 25 million people into bankruptcy. Now, maybe the most important point I'll make tonight, folks, is that the president can cancel all federally owned student loans. That's 87% of all federal student loan debt, or all student loan debt, period. He can cancel it without needing one dime from the Treasury, without adding one penny to the national debt. So, you know, during this pandemic where we threw, $5, $6, $7 trillion out into the country, all of that stuff, including like $1 trillion in PPP loans that don't need to be repaid, all that stuff added to the national debt and required money to be drawn from the Treasury or printed or whatever you want to call it. It added to the national debt. It was an actual cost that Uncle Sam had to write a check for. The president can cancel all President can cancel all student loans, period. No, sorry. Switch reverse, back on myself again. The president can cancel all federally owned student loans, 87% of all student loan debt, with nothing more than the sign of his pen. He needs not one dime from the Treasury. He would add not one penny to the national debt. So, guys, this lending system, that's what needs to happen. Before the pandemic, my best guess is that over half the people were not able to make payments at all. Another 30% were making payments, but their balances were going up. So, folks, there is no better, easier, cheaper way to stimulate the economy than by canceling these ridiculous, predatory, constitutionally violative loans that comprise this lending scam. And it is a scam. This is not a bad borrower problem. This is a bad lending system. Unfortunately, we happen to be caught in the noose while the whole entire scaffolding is falling apart. So we need to fight, folks. The lending system's dead. These loans will be canceled. Of that, there is no doubt. Of that $1.8 trillion outstanding, my best estimate is that the government was never going to get back, even in the best of circumstances, more than, I don't know, maybe $500 billion at the most. But remember also, guys, most of that $1.8 trillion, it's not original unpaid principal. It's interest or penalties and fees or other stuff that got baked into a new loan often. It's nonsense. The amount of that portfolio that is actual unpaid principal, in other words, if the loans were canceled tomorrow, how much would the government actually be losing? Well, no, first of all, I don't know. I don't even think the Department of Education knows. But my best guess, and I'm usually pretty close, is that it would be maybe a couple $100 billion at most, and it could very well be zero, because the federal government has been booking like $50 billion in profit on this lending system since 2010, and the federal government has even been making a profit on defaulted student loans. Yes, I said that. You heard that right. Government has been making a profit on defaulted student loans for decades. So it could very well be that these loans, all federally owned student loans, could be canceled tomorrow, and the taxpayer would be breaking about even. So there is no reason not to cancel these loans. Quite frankly, President Trump should have done this before the election. I think it's the biggest mistake of his presidency that he did not. And so, we are a highly, fiercely non-partisan group. So wherever you may lie on the political spectrum, we are glad that you're here, and we need you to fight. Now, having said that, most of the resistance to loan cancellation and even resistance to bankruptcy, returning bankruptcy to student loans, it comes from conservatives. Well, I wouldn't actually call them conservatives, but it comes from Republicans in Congress. I don't know why. Well, I kind of do know why, but it's kind of a long-winded explanation. Suffice it to say, as a practical matter, most of our political opposition comes from Republicans. I don't know, again, I don't understand why a Republican would defend and perpetuate this big government lending monstrosity. I kind of do know, but if they're really conservative, no true conservative would ever defend this lending system. Are you listening to me, Virginia Fox? Are you listening to me, Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, you snakes? Those people aren't conservatives. They are fighting for the worst big government lending scam in the history of this country, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves. But, shame or no shame, Republicans are now losing elections. The worst state in the union in terms of student loan debt versus state budget is the state I mentioned earlier, Georgia. What just happened in Georgia? They just lost the Republicans just lost both Senate seats to Democrats. Now, again, we're a fiercely nonpartisan group. We basically hate both parties. But that's got to be a wake-up call for Republicans, if we can get even one Republican, if we could get Brian Kemp, the Republican governor of Georgia, to stand up, look at the data, look at the facts that we've been putting out for months now, and simply say, Mr. President, enough. I will not let my fine, fair state of Georgia be conquered and enslaved by this federal debt. Mr. President, cancel these loans. If we can get even one Republican governor to do that, I think it will cause a groundswell where dozens of other governors will join that call. And guys, I'm telling you, at that point, the lending system, we will see a good, clean death to this lending system. We will see the loans go away. So whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, we have to push the Republicans extra hard. We've got a very strong argument to make, and you need to help us make it, no matter what your political stripes are, no matter where you live. You don't have to kiss their ass. I mean, think about it this way. If you are a Democrat and you hate a Republican governor, and that Republican governor's state is being trashed by student loan debt, and I could mention names here, Georgia's number one, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas, Missouri, did I say Ohio, New Hampshire is kind of battleground, Michigan kind of battleground. Those are all the states that owe more in student loan debt than their entire state budgets. Almost all of them, except for I think North Carolina, have a Republican governor. So these people need to be confronted, and they need to be forced to weigh in one way or the other on this issue. So if you're a Democrat and you hate Republicans, frankly, that's all the more reason to be pushing a Republican governor to join us in our call. If they do what we need them to do, and that is the conservative thing, by the way, well, then great. Then maybe you won't hate that governor quite as much. That's what we want. Now, if they don't, well, that's fine too. We will have exposed them for fighting for a big government lending monstrosity over their own people. One other important thing you need to know is that of the 45.4 million federal student loan borrowers out there, my best estimate, and this is based on research from, I believe, Pew. Yeah, Pew for sure. Pew Research. Over half of people with some college identify as being either Republican or independent. It's about like 43% Republican, like 12% independent. So that's 55%. That's over half of student loan borrowers are either Republican or independent. So there's a very strong case to be made for Republicans, guys. We have to make it. We've got to kill this ridiculous opposition to loan cancellation in the bud. You know, I am so sick, and I think hopefully you are too, of these Mike Rowe's and Dave Ramsey's and these name brand conservatives on television saying, no, we shouldn't cancel loans. That's not fair. It's not fair to the people who are already paid. It's not fair to the people who went to college. And we've got to shut these people down, guys. They are just completely full of shit. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. They're not conservatives. They're the opposite of conservatives. Shame on them for that. We've got to shut them down. We've got 45.4 million people on our site potentially. Obviously, that's on paper. We don't have them in our group here tonight. But what we do have, we've got over 1 million people on our petition, and they are on our side and are willing to fight. We've got 20,000 people in this Facebook group. So we're not a wilting violet, guys. We're not a we are not a tempest in a teapot. We are an actual tempest. We've got a small little army together now, and we can do a lot with that muscle when we flex it. So the last thing I'm going to say, well, the one call to action I'm going to make before my very last announcement, you need to help us. This is a grassroots thing, as grassroots as it gets. So I'm going to ask you, please, and I know you may hate Twitter. I hate Twitter. Everybody hates Twitter. But please, follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/studentloanjust1. Studentloanjust1. And get into the habit of helping us with these very simple daily actions. They usually take about 15 seconds at the most. Get into the habit of doing these daily actions with us. When 1,000 people do it, yeah, it's not terrible. When 10,000 people do it, that's a big deal. When 100,000 people do it, that's stuff that the news will report on. If 500,000 people did it, that's pretty much game over. We win, guys. When we can mobilize that number of people on a daily basis, these loans are gone, done. We can overwhelm every switchboard and every congressional and House and Senate and House committee office. We can blow the doors off of almost every computer server out there. We will be a fighting force, and these loans, mark my words, will be gone. Which I think is what you want, right? It's what has to happen for the good of the country, for the good of our nation, and for the welfare of our citizens across the political spectrum. So please do that. We are the tip of the spear. In fact, we are the spear in many ways. We are the eye of the storm. In fact, we are the storm. And wishy-washy politicians like Joe Biden will go where the wind blows. So will the media, by the way. If Fox News was to get 500,000 appeals in the next week to give another thought to the student loan cancellation issue and the student loan bankruptcy issue, you can bet your ass they would rethink their position. So remember that. Maybe the most important thing I'll say tonight is, guys, we're making a film. We're making a documentary, and we are going to be premiering the first chapter of this film on July 26th. It's a part of the Whistleblowers Film Festival and Summit. Help us market this film. You know, we're a DIY group. We don't have a $10 million budget. We don't even have $1 million budget. In fact, we don't even have a $100,000 budget. I'm not sure what our budget is, but it's way less than $100,000. What we have are people, and we need you to help. This is going to be the strongest, most clear, concise, hardest hitting film, documentary, ever to be made on the student loan issue. It's the strongest thing out there. There's no noise, all signal. We got the best interviews. We interviewed all the key players. Trust me, this film is important. Let's just say that. Please go to the website. It's called scaredtodebtmovie.com. Scaredtodebtmovie.com. T-O. Scared to Debt. D-E-B-T. Movie.com. Participate. Help us. Help us get it around. Pitch in a donation to help get it through the post-production. Sign up for this whistleblower conference on July 26th. We're gonna want as many people as possible to attend. I mean, this could be the thing that finally breaks the back of this lending system and frees the nation. This is history that we're making here. So please do that. Scaredtodebtmovie.com. Google it, just whatever. Go there and help with that, please. If you forget everything I said tonight, remember that. The very last thing I'll say tonight is please donate if you can. As I mentioned, we don't have any sort of a budget to speak of. We are a completely hand-to-mouth, strictly grassroots group. We don't need much money to survive, thrive, fight, and win this battle. We really do not. Having said that, we can't do it on nothing. So if you can go to our website, studentloanjustice.org, make a donation large or small. It will go a long ways, and I personally appreciate it, by the way. Fundraising is always just very difficult for us, and that's for good reason. You know, we don't do deals with bad guys. We don't sell our members out. We are ethically 1,000,000% pure. And that comes at a cost that, you know, we don't do deals with bad people. The only revenue that we get is through donations, personal gifts from normal people like you and me. So please help with that if you can. But yeah, go to scaredtodebtmovie.com and get ready to rock. We got to push this thing out into the zeitgeist big time, starting July 26th, but even sooner. So I know I've said a lot tonight. I think I went on way too long, and if I missed your questions, I apologize. I'm doing this thing by phone now, so it's really hard. I'm going to see if I can dial it in and see any comments. Okay. Dwayne says, well said. Well, thank you, Dwayne. Thank you very much. And I probably am missing some other comments, but I apologize in advance for that. But remember, guys, this is your battle to fight. These are your loans. This is your problem. We are bulldogs. We will never stop, but you have to help. So have a great weekend. Check back very often. Things are happening very quickly right now. We need you. You need us. There's more power in numbers, and we got this, but we need you. So please, good luck. Have a great weekend. Godspeed, everyone, and God bless.